If you are not using this one strategy when you're building your slips on PrizePicks, you are leaving a ton of money on the table. I'm actually a limited PrizePicks sports bettor, which essentially means I can only bet $25 per day and $5 per slip. The reason for that is genuinely because I've made too much money on PrizePicks. Because I've actually made so much money on their DFS app, they've basically banned my account from allowing me to actually make a ton of money. I've completely figured out their system and I know exactly how to beat them long term. Back in 2024, I made over $30,000 on PrizePicks alone, and I have used this exact strategy all year to make over $40,000 in 2026 and get limited on every single DFS app you know. The beautiful part about this one strategy I'm going to teach you right now is you can use it on Better, Underdog, PrizePicks. You can use it on any app, even the sports books, to be able to make money when sports betting. Now, to prove to you that I'm actually a limited bettor, I'm going to go to the regular popular board on PrizePicks, and I'm going to pick two random players to go over and to go under, and I'm going to try to put $10 on this bet. As you'll see, it won't go through because I'm actually limited to $5. They won't allow me to put anything more than $5, as you can see on the screen, and I cannot bet more than $5. If I try right now for $5, I'll actually be able to put the slip in. As you can see, they have limited my action to $5 a bet. But before we get into this one sharp strategy that I'm going to teach you, you need to understand how PrizePicks actually works. You need to completely change your mindset on sports betting and betting on DFS apps like PrizePicks in general. Believing that every single prop is actually 50 on the over and 50 on the under is actually completely false. If we take a look at the Shakira Austin 9.5 rebound line, for example, this isn't actually equally weighted on the over and the under. This isn't an actual 50-50 payout. Because PrizePicks doesn't actually use American odds like every other sportsbook, it makes it seem that if you take the over or the under, it's a 50-50 chance, and it's your skill gap to pick the right one. But that's completely false, and the entire image that PrizePicks paints is completely wrong. This is not skill-based whatsoever, it's completely math-based. There's actually a favorite and an underdog side to this Shakira Austin line. How do we know which side's the favorite and which side's the underdog? It's actually very simple once you understand a few concepts. There are sharp sports books and there are soft sports books. The sharp sports books are the ones with the big teams and the $1 million algorithms. Think FanDuel, DraftKings, Pinnacle, Circa, and the soft books are more ones like Hard Rock, Caesars, BetMGM, and Fanatics. Pretty much any other sports book other than the ones I listed. Now, the reason these sports books like FanDuel, DraftKings, Pinnacle, and Circa are a lot sharper than the softer books are simply because they set their lines more correct to what the line is supposed to be every single night. They also take a lot more liquidity on player props. Now, all that means is essentially they allow more people to bet more money on those exact player props because they're confident in their lines. This is the biggest tell to knowing that they set their lines correct. They would not take this much volume on player props if they were not confident in their line setting. Now, this being said, if we just take a look at the entire market, the sharp market, DraftKings, FanDuel, Pinnacle, and Circa, and we take a look at the average of what the odds are set at, we can get a good idea on what this line is supposed to be. For the sake of the video, I'm just going to look at FanDuel for this specific Austin prop, but we're going to take a look at her rebound line to show you. As you can see, for Shakira Austin on the over 9.5 rebound line is actually minus 102 odds, and on the under it is minus 130 odds. Now, for anyone who's ever sports bet, you'll know that American odds minus 102 is a lot less favored than the American odds of minus 130. Now, they're technically both favorited sides, and I'm going to explain that in a second, but for right now, we just need to know which side is actually more favored. Now, obviously, you can see the minus 130 is a little bit more favored, but I'm going to explain exactly why. Quickly before we continue, if you want every single play I make with this strategy, you can get a 5-day free trial with the link below. And if you want to try Upside Tools completely free as well, you can get a 5-day free trial with the link below that. And you can also use code ICON at checkout and you'll get 25% off any tool you choose. We can go over to my favorite tool, which is Upside Tools, and we can take a look at the percentages that these odds actually have. Every single American odd has a direct implied probability of how often that is going to hit. For example, minus 102 odds is directly paired with a 50.50% implied probability, which essentially means if you sports bet on any single over or under at a minus 102 odds, you're going to hit that prop at a 50.5% of the time. So slightly over a 50-50 margin. If you take a look at minus 130, you're going to hit that prop at a 56.52% rate. But there's one huge problem with this. Both of them are favored. How can both the over and the under be favored on the exact same line? This would technically mean that she's not only favored to go over 9.5 rebounds, but she's also favored to go under. She's just slightly more favored to go on the underside. How does that work? Now, that's where one of the most important understandings of sports betting comes into play. That is what they call the house edge or the VIG. The VIG is essentially the extra probability they add to every two-player combination to make sure they make money on the long term. They add a 5 to 10% tax or VIG onto every single line. Game lines, player props, you name it, it has it. 5 to 10% VIG on every single prop. Now, how does that affect us? We cannot actually go on FanDuel right now and take those two lines and be profitable long term because of how much edge they have on that player prop. So what we need to do is understand what the true or the fair odds without the house edge and without the VIG is, so we know exactly what we're playing. And that's where this calculator is super powerful. Not only can you see the implied odds, 56 and 50%, you can actually see the fair odds that this line is actually set at. For example, 47.18% and 52.82% for the minus 130 line. These two fair odds add up to 100%, whereas these two implied percentages add up to over 107%. That is 7% more than the typical 100% for two outcomes, which is mathematically impossible. You can't have two outcomes that add up to more than 100%. So that is where they get their house edge or their tax. So that being said, once we understand where their edge is at, how do we beat them? If we take a look, these fair odds actually have no VIG or no house edge odds paired with them. So plus 112 is for 47.18% and minus 112 is 52.82%. As you can see, they're directly opposite of each other. Plus 112 and minus 112. That means there is no house edge, there is no VIG in that bet. We essentially just removed 7% VIG from that exact bet. So now we went from on the over is minus 102 and the under is minus 130 to the over is plus 112 and the under is minus 112. Completely different odds than what we see on FanDuel. That being said, if we took her rebound line over 9.5 at plus 112 odds, or we took her under rebound line at minus 112 odds, we would break even 50% of the time. Over the long term, if you were to bet this exact prop at either plus 112 or minus 112 over 3 months, every single day, 10 times a day, you should break even 50-50. This is all a long-term game. FanDuel plays a long-term game with every single customer. So although some customers might actually get in, win big, and get out before they get unlucky, 99% of their sports bettors lose long-term and stay until they lose everything. That is how these industries make so much money. As you can see, FanDuel is worth $31 billion, which means not only do they set their lines correct, but they also set every boundary so that you cannot win long term exactly how it should be, so they make money long term. They didn't get rich quick or get a few props that won and got $31 billion. They set a program to make sure they win long term, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do. Now, going back to the NoVIG calculator, all we now have to do is take Shakira Austin on the over or the under at better odds than the NoVIG odds. For example, plus 113 or better for the over, or minus 111 or better on the under. All we have to do is get those two prices on this bet, assuming FanDuel set their line correctly on this bet, to be able to be profitable over the long term and get the house edge back. Now, this may seem super complicated, but it's actually very easy to do once you understand PrizePicks math. Now, PrizePicks actually has odds for every single player prop they have. You don't know that because they hide it behind parlay types. So now what you need to understand is every single parlay type that you build, a 2-pick power, a 3-pick flex, they all have implied odds for every single player prop hidden behind that parlay type. So the 2-pick power that adds up to a 3x payout evenly distributes that 3x payout, which is plus 200 odds, between two different players equally. For example, each leg equals minus 136 odds. The first and the second leg equally distributed to minus 136 odds. That would equal a plus 201 parlay, which equals a 3x payout, $100 to $300. The exact same way you would do it on PrizePicks when building out 2-man parlays. Each leg is equally distributed because no matter what side you choose, over or under, you're always going to get that 3x payout on PrizePicks when you build a 2-man. But as you can see, if we just add one more leg at minus 136, we get significantly different odds than what we get when we build a 3-man on PrizePicks. When we build a 3-man on PrizePicks, you'll notice we get a 6x payout if we power that play. But over here on the parlay calculator, if we put 3 legs at minus 136, we get a 5.2x payout, which essentially means all of these odds that we got on the 2-man are actually a lot better if we build it on a 3-man. For example, if we change all of these odds equally distributed to minus 122, we get a 6x payout, plus 503 odds, making each leg a lot better probability for us over or under. No matter what side we choose, we get minus 122 odds when we do build out the 3-pick power. Now, remember when I told you every single odd has a direct probability equal to it? That's what we need to understand about the minus 122 line. It has a 54.95% probability attached to that odds. That being said, let's take a look at every single parlay type and the implied probability those odds have with it. As you can see, when building a 5 and a 6-pick flex, you get a 54.3% probability for that exact prop, which equates to a minus minus 119 odd prop. So you're getting minus 119 for all 5 players or all 6 players when building a 5 and a 6 pick flex. As you can see for the 3 pick power, you're getting a 55% implied probability, which does equal the minus 122 odds we just went over. And as you can see, a 3 pick flex has the worst slip type build at a 57.8% implied probability, which essentially just means minus 173 odds. So now if we go back to this exact player prop of Shakira Austin, if we take a look at the NoVIG odds, plus 112 on the over and minus 112 on the under, we have to analyze our parlay types and see if any of those parlay types give us better odds than the NoVIG odds of FanDuel's Shakira Austin line. Now if we remember, a 5 and a 6 pick flex have the best slip types at a minus 119 odds, and neither of these odds beat that. We get minus 112, which is 7 cents worse, and then plus 112, which is much worse than the minus 119 line we would get if we built this prop in a 5 or 6 pick flex. So what we need to do is find props that actually beat the minus 119 odds or the minus 122 odds for a 3 pick power that we can put on our parlay types to be able to have that exact edge that FanDuel currently has on us. Now I have the math we're looking for every single player prop. If we found a prop with an under of minus 144 on FanDuel and a plus 108 on the over, we would be able to DVIG or take away the house edge line for this and see that plus 123 is the NoVIG on the over and minus 123 is the NoVIG on the under. So essentially, if we were to build a 5 or 6 pick flex, we would get minus 119 odds, and all we would want to do is take the under, because minus 119 are better odds or less favored odds than the minus 123, which essentially means we're getting more bang for our buck if we take the minus 119 on the under instead of taking the minus 123 on FanDuel. But those are the fair odds. We do not want to beat the house edge odds of minus 144. We want to beat the fair odds of minus 123. Now, when I do find these player props that have that small edge over the NoVIG or the no house edge odds for this player prop, that is called EV. Plus EV, which is expected value on how much I'm going to make over the long term if I continuously bet this prop. For example, FanDuel has a 7% expected value on every single player prop because they have the house edge or they have the VIG incorporated into their odds. So all we need to do is find player props that have the positive expected value on every single line and add all of those to our parlays. Now all of these lines have expected value based on the parlay type you're building. For example, if you are building a 5 or a 6 pick flex on PrizePicks, you're going to have expected value compared to the minus 119 line, or if you're building a 3 pick power, you're going to have expected value compared to the minus 122 line that we just talked about. And that's what leads me to the EV Sniper. This is essentially the exact page I use to build profitable PrizePicks slips with positive expected value on every single player prop. As you can see, minus 119 odds on PrizePicks is what this sniper tool is comparing to, so that I am actually getting plus expected value on a 5 and a 6 pick flex, which obviously is the most profitable slip type over on PrizePicks. Now for people who don't have a lot of time, this is a perfect tool to be using every single day, because not only does it save time, but it tells you right here exactly how much EV or plus expected value you have on every single player prop. For example, if we look at this exact baseball prop, you'll notice on PrizePicks we get minus 119 odds for over 5.5 fantasy score. But if you take a look at Underdog, Better, and Pick 6, 3 other DFS books, all of them are setting their lines at either 6 or 6.5. That is a huge discrepancy between the entire market, and we should be taking advantage of that. But taking the over 5.5 line is exactly what we want to do, because it is clearly too low than the rest of the market. Now if we just go ahead and click the plus button on every plus EV prop on here, if we build a 6 pick flex, the most profitable slip type, we open up the bet slip, we'll see we have a 26% expected value on this bet, which means over the long term we are going to profit 26% of our money that we bet on this slip every single time we place it, which means over the long term we're going to have a huge profit margin on our slips. But the beautiful part is, if we click this enter on PrizePicks button, as you can see, it opens up our 6 pick flex. Now the best part about this is we can actually just go ahead and click flex or power and go ahead and lay this down. Now because I know building these profitable PrizePicks slips can be very time consuming, I've actually built a Discord that does it completely for you. You can completely take your hands off of building these profitable slips and just trust the math. We build the plays using every strategy I taught you in this video and every video I've ever posted on my YouTube. Not only do we build PrizePicks plays, but we also build every single DFS app, and we also build the sportsbooks and exchanges. Every single play we put is in this Discord, and you can get the entire thing free for 5 free days. We currently have one of the most profitable track Discords, and as you can see, just the June recap, and this is just a personal recap. We actually have 2 other cappers that do post in this Discord that use the exact same strategies. But as you can see, my pick 6 was up 33 units, my PrizePicks up 22 units, Dabble 20, and etc. Right? You can see every single app is either up units or just slightly down. I had about a 92 unit month, which means even a $10 better on these picks would have made $920. Everything is completely math based and you can profit as well. But I have another strategy that not many people are using still to this day, and it is by far even better than EV betting. It is following sharp money. I highly recommend to start doing this because it is not only the sharpest strategy out there right now, but you can also add it in when you EV bet. So it's almost like you're doubling up on your confidence on these EV bets, and you're actually getting a higher hit rate and a much higher ROI. And I'm going to show you exactly how I follow this sharp money. If we take a look at the first play on the Whale Watch tool, you'll see there's $929 of liquidity on Bubba Chandler over 4.5 strikeouts. Now, essentially what that's telling us is there is $929 being bet on the exchanges on Bubba Chandler's over 4.5 strikeouts. That is a very strong indicator that somebody sharp is on the exchanges betting this exact line on the over. This $929 is a very strong indicator that there is either inside knowledge or a very good model showing that Bubba Chandler should be going over 4.5 strikeouts tonight. And once we can take a deeper look, we can see what price they actually got this line at. As you can see, the sharp that laid this money down is laying it down at -120 over on NoVIG, a sharp exchange. So we need to make sure we are either getting the same or a better price than the sharp who's laying it down. For example, -120, we need to be getting -119. So for this play specifically, to follow this $929 of liquidity, we need to get better than -120. Building a 5 and a 6 pick flex will do that for us. So what I highly recommend is adding this to a 5 or 6 pick flex for -119 odds. That way you are beating the sharp, laying down $900 of confidence on this play. The sharps that are laying money on this Whale Watch tool are market makers. These guys are the ones that are moving the market and moving all of the lines every single day. PrizePicks, even the sharper books like FanDuel and DraftKings, take a look at these exchanges and see where these lines are being set at. For example, the line that got set at -120, all of the books are now correlating to make sure that their line agrees with these sharp market makers on NoVIG and ProfitX. 98% of the time, any player prop over $500 of liquidity, no matter what DFS app and no matter what sportsbook, I'm going to take that prop on my slip or as a straight bet on a sports. That is a lot of liquidity on one singular player